Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for a dynamic effort lower day, but a quick reminder for those of you who watch these videos every day, please remember to click like down below. It would be greatly appreciated. Alright, showing a little bit of my warming up here. So I just did a 20 rep set of belt squats and a 20 rep set of reverse hypers to get in my flow. A couple of notes as we get into the training today. I want to do more straight bar stuff on the squatting now that my shoulder health is good enough. I can get under it. I can low bar squat, do all those things. So I'm going to do a little more of my speed work with it. I'm going to do a little more of my max work with it, right? And we're going to ease back over into starting to max on some box squats coming up. You know, maybe in a month. About a month I'll start doing some back squats with the different bars. Instead of pin squats, box squats, things like that. Also, I noticed my low back still felt a little crampy from that minor issue doing the good mornings earlier this week, trying to use the Buffalo bar and it getting some uneven loading. So I decided to do no good mornings today to let my low back mostly rest. I'll continue to do my daily reverse hypers. All right, we do reverse hypers every single day. And it should help with that quite a bit. I just didn't want to risk it. It just felt, again, as I was going through some of the ramping up and some of the other stuff, felt it a little bit crampy. And so, again, I just decided it's not worth the risk to me to do any heavy good mornings today. So we focused on all the other stuff and still got a very, very good workout in. So speed squats, going back down to kind of some of the percentages I talked to you guys about and some of the other stuff of really focusing on keeping that bar speed at least a meter per second. And when I timed it, all these fives, it only took my concentric reps were less than 1 second, quite a bit less than 1 second. So again, I'm going to keep working on getting faster on those, but I did time some of it with the footage to kind of see where it's at. But I did a 5x5. Again, keeping the weights light. Managed it, first time I've done this with a straight bar in a while. So I'm just happy to be able to get under a straight bar again. Now, I'm not going to say it was the most comfortable thing in the world. I have to get pretty tight to get into a low bar position. I have to get real tight. And so it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's not sharp and painful. And afterwards, I feel okay. And I think one of the perks of doing the 5x5 right now is that I just don't have to get under the bar as many times, right? If I'm doing 12 doubles or something, I have to get under that bar 12 times into that low bar position. Not really ideal. Now, some of this people are like, wow, this is just such a lightweight. And that's the point. It's supposed to be explosive and it's supposed to accentuate your max effort days, not fatigue you, right? And that's the idea. And this system works. I've shown plenty of it. Plenty of other lifters have shown it. It absolutely works for this. But your speed work is supposed to be fast. It's supposed to be fast. And you guys notice I'm getting pretty deep. I brought my stance in just a hair. I don't have my toes quite touching the edge of the racks. Why? Because I know that I'm a little better there. That's a little closer to what I'm going to have to do on a back squat. So I thought, let me practice some of that a bit. So I've got my toes about 1 inch from the edge of the racks instead of pushed right up against it. And I might mess with rotating the stances a little bit. I might mess with some shoulder width on some of the speed boxes as a different variation. All right, we might mess with some of that. Because I'm not an ultra wide squatter. I'm a wide squatter, but even when I go straight raw, like even that 605 I did with the cambered bar, it was wide, but it wasn't super wide, right? And it wasn't as wide as I do some of my box squats. So I think it's good to be a little bit closer to the stance that I know I'm going to use to lift the most weight and get a little bit of practice even on the speed work. But, you know, again, we'll rotate through the stuff. We want a different training stimulus every time. Every time. I did sumo today, exact same setup, same sort of percentages, 5x5, because again, I felt like I need the hip and adductor work. I need it at this point. Also, because my lower back was feeling still a little bit fatigued, borderline minor strain from that good morning situation earlier, right? I thought it would again be best to just stick with sumo. But again, I needed the hip activation, and it actually felt good, especially doing fives. I've never done speed sumos with fives before. So again, completely novel training response. And yes, I'm aware that I don't squat super deep compared to some people when I do my sumos. Just like that sumo max I did earlier this week. You know, and like I said, I wasn't super happy about it, but some people are like, yeah, that was pretty strong. I don't know why you're not happy. It's like, well, because it was less than 600 pounds. That's why. That's it. That's the entire reason. All right. I need to be over 600 pounds at all my variations of the deadlift. And we'll get back there. That's where we need to be moving forward. But speed pulls felt good. And afterwards, one of the things that you guys will see I got my Rogue bench in. And we'll get to that in a minute while you guys watch the speed pulls. I got my Rogue hip thrust bench. And for people who are wondering, why am I putting it inside the rack? Because I needed to see if I can get in and out of it inside the rack easy. Because I want to be able to use bands and chains against it also. Right? I want to be able to do that for variation because I really want to mess with the hip thrust again. I felt like my deadlift got a lot out of the hip thrust when I was really pushing them. When I first broke 600 plus, the first time I've done that since being on YouTube, I had been doing a lot of hip thrusts. I feel like I get good carryover. You know, in theory, it should carry over better to the squat. And it did carry over to my squat, but I feel like my deadlifts get a lot out of it. But I need to be able to have variation. I can't just do the same movement. We get overused that way. But the ability to add bands and chains gives me multiple exercises while doing the hip thrusts, right? Because we do get a longer range of motion in the glute bridge, and I like glute bridges. But I think the thing with the hip thrust to keep in mind, so there is always concern with the low back, but I think a lot of that's dependent upon how tall of a bench you use. And I have this one to where it's set, where I can get it set to 16 inches instead of an 18-inch bench. So I just kept ramping on this till it got to really heavy fives. The first one I did 405. It took me a bit to really get my foot position where I want it. And I ultimately, for my last couple sets, I managed to get to 495, and those were hard, right? Those felt like 5 rep maxes. So we did something like 405, 455, 475, then 495 for 2 sets of 5. But those were, again, pretty much all I had. And I kind of changed the angle of the camera there. I realized in some of it, you guys get less crotch shots this way. Some people don't like that. And it's not intentional. It's just sometimes my camera angle. So I changed it over just in case that was bothering anyone. And I'll try to remember to do that in the future on this. But again, I've got to pull myself in pretty tight. As you guys see, I've got to pull the legs in and everything. And I showed an example of that in one of them so you guys can see what I need to do to get under this bar. But I felt these, right? Got a lot of really good muscle activation on this. And I was happy with them. And then up next, we did 5 sets of belt squats, 5 by 5. And I took, again, slightly narrower stance today. I tried to mess with some chains to see if I can get them set up. They were just a pain in the butt. And I found that the box is unworkable. So I'm pretty much going to be limited to bands and chains on this. So it might be mostly band work. But as far as setting up just straight plates like this, it's been pretty easy, pretty straightforward. The bands look pretty simple also. Chains might be slightly problematic just due to range of motion and loading. They're doable, but they tend to get caught under the plates. I'll just have to space it out a little bit better when I want to do some chains. But for now, I feel like because of the nature of this movement, the ease of recovery on it, I can get away with running it as it is for now towards the end of a workout, right, without a lot of variation, particularly if I get good morning, hip thrusts, all that stuff. Some of these smaller lifts like this, we can get away with these for a while. But I will still need to have some variation in it. But trying to get into a deeper squat position on this, trying to reach depth. So again, sticking with the same weight and trying to focus on getting depth with it. And it's going to be tough to progress at this point now, right? It's going to be just pure hypertrophy. Now that I've somewhat learned this exercise and I'm getting into the groove of it, the weights are only going to go up on it as I gain muscle. So I'm just going to push challenging limit sets. But again, the benefit works all the muscles of the squat in the lower body, but puts the back in traction. So again, this can replace squat volume entirely, right? You replace it entirely. So again, a great exercise worth every penny. And so we got some very good novel training stimulus in today, right? We got the hip thrust, got back under a straight bar, slightly narrower stance on the belt squat, and working on getting depth. And then I decided to finish off with Glute Ham Raises. And so what I did on these, I went back one setting instead of the hardest setting, because I'm only getting 5 to 6 reps on that. I went back to one setting down, which is still pretty hard, so that I could get 10s on it, so that we can get just a little bit of reps. I don't need everything I do to be 5s. We don't need everything to be 5s. A little bit of rep work, especially on something like this, it's more or less a single joint exercise. It's not a bad idea to get some 10s in, some 8s, some 10s, some stuff like that. So I decided to do that today and finish off my hamstrings. I feel like at this point, though, my hamstrings are pretty strong. They don't need to be a major weak point focus. They need to get good quality work in, but I don't need to push them maybe as much as some of the other muscles. Although maybe I do. I mean, we could argue you can never have hamstrings that are too big. But I'm not going to come in and try to just push tons and tons and tons of heavy volume for them. Normally it's going to be some good mornings, a second hamstring exercise like this every day, and as long as I progress on them, we should be good. My hamstrings will continue to grow. But as far as a lot of my lower body stuff goes, I need more glute, I need more hip, right? These are the things that I need to be building up further to get my squat back up. To get my squat back up where it needs to be. Just like we have certain things we're focusing on the bench press and the upper body. But this will finish everything off. And they felt good today while doing 10s. It didn't kind of hit me as hard as the 5s have been with this. So I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.